What is the number one thing that you can do to keep yourself from getting injured on a table saw? More important than a riving knife, more effective than splurging on a saw stop. The best thing that you can possibly do to keep all of your fingers is to make sure they're never near the blade to begin with. A crosscut sled not only keeps your hands away from the blade, but it also holds the pieces square to improve the accuracy of your cuts. It gives you a zero clearance surface to reduce tear out. It can keep wonky boards from binding and causing dangerous kickback. It makes cutting bevels and miters a breeze, and it can even work with dado stacks.
A crosscut sled is truly the best upgrade you can make to your table saw. Today, we're going to show you how to build one and why we think that this design is the best that the internet has to offer, and why, despite how much we love our crosscut sled, we think there's actually one upgrade that's even more important for your table saw. So, if you're ready to take your table saw to the next level, come join us on this adventure.
If you've never built a crosscut sled before, we have a complete DIY plan set for this build, complete with part drawings and step-by-step assembly drawings available on our site shop or Etsy shop. But even if you've built a sled before, be sure to stick around and to find out what makes this design the best sled we've ever used.
We recommend using a sanded plywood for this build. You can find it at most home improvement stores at a reasonable price. Although you only need a partial sheet, buying a full sheet is often more cost-effective, and you'll have extra for future projects. In fact, you can use the rest of that plywood sheet to build that most important table saw upgrade that we mentioned earlier. If you think you know what we're hinting at, then leave a comment down below. And stick around to the end of the video to see if you were right. Here's a quick rundown on what you'll need. A sheet of 3/4 inch sanded plywood for the base and fences. Material for the miter rail. We recommend a UHMW plastic, T-track or a T-slot bit, and T-track accessories like clamps and a flip stop. Screws and wood glue. Sandpaper and wood finish. Various clamps, a straight edge, and of course, tools to cut the wood with. Once you've gathered all your materials, it's time to get started. With our plans in hand, let's lay out the cut pattern. This plan set includes a layout sheet to help you minimize waste and maximize efficiency. Take your time here to plan your cuts carefully. In order to get the most use out of this sheet, we need to make sure that the cuts are in the right order. This allows us to nest our parts together and minimize scrap. We find that it's helpful to always mark both sides of our blades with an X in the middle. This makes sure we also line ourselves up in the right spot and never end up short due to the blade curve.
Next up, it's time to cut out the pieces. A track saw is perfect for breaking down the sheet into more manageable sizes. Just be careful if you put the sheet up on sawhorses. The last thing you want is for this to happen. If you don't have a track saw, don't worry. You can use a circular saw with a straight edge as a guide. Just make sure to clamp the guide securely to the plywood to prevent any movement while cutting. After breaking down the large sheet, you'll have smaller pieces that are easier to handle on the table saw. Cut each piece to its final dimensions, ensuring the edges are straight and square. Before long, you'll have all the pieces cut and will be ready to glue the fence blanks together. If you're following our plans, all of your blanks will be larger than the final fence. This is so that we can trim them down after they're glued together to ensure a perfect edge. You still want to keep the edges mostly aligned, but a slight deviation isn't the end of the world. The real key here is to clamp the fence to a straight edge while the glue dries. This ensures that it sets straight. A long level or your table saw's fence works great for this. Just be careful not to get glue on your table saw's fence. Make sure you clean up any squeeze out before it dries. Repeat this process for both the miter fence and the back fence. For the front fence, simply glue and clamp the pieces together. We don't use this as a reference surface when cutting, so it doesn't really matter if it isn't perfectly straight. Use plenty of clamps to apply even pressure across the entire length of the fence. This will help prevent any gaps or misalignment. Let the glue dry for at least a few hours, or preferably overnight to ensure a strong bond. Once the glue is completely dry, you can remove the clamps. The fences should be solid and ready for the next step.
Once the glue is dry, scrape off any excess so that you have a flat surface for your table saw fence to reference. You'll then use a table saw to trim the fences to their final dimensions. Start by running the scraped edge against your fence to trim off just enough that you get through the dried glue on the other side. Then flip the piece around and run this freshly cut edge along your fence to cut the piece to its final width. Lastly, use your miter gauge to square up the ends and cut the piece to its final length. These steps are crucial for achieving precise cuts later on. Take your time, make sure each cut is perfect. A well-made fence is the backbone of your crosscut sled's accuracy. For our sled, we were also making a miter fence to help us make more accurate angled cuts. The process is the same as the back fence, except you will cut one end at 45 degrees and the other square. To make this convenient to use, we are going to add a slot down the middle for some T-bolts and knobs. Do this using a router table. Start with a 1/4 inch straight bit and gradually increase the depth until you cut through the material. You may have to flip the piece over to make the cuts meet in the middle. Then we can shift the fence slightly and widen this slot so that it's wide enough for the T-bolts. Just be careful as you do this in case you experience any kickback. But that probably won't happen, right? Well, I'm glad that's done, and I won't need to use the router table again for this project. Let's move on to our other pieces.
In order to use these T-track accessories, we need to add a T-slot to our sled. There are a few ways to add T-slots or tracks to your crosscut sled. You can use a T-slot router bit to make a T-slot in the wood, or you can cut a dado using a router or table saw and install a physical T-track. Each method has its pros and cons, so choose what works best for you. We made a whole video about why we decided not to use T-track, so be sure to check that out next. For the T-slot router method, start with a 1/4 inch bit to remove some material, then switch to the T-slot bit for the final cut. This reduces heat buildup and tear out and keeps your bits sharper for longer. If you prefer using a physical T-track, simply cut a groove slightly wider than the track, then apply a little epoxy or super glue and press your track in. If you have short enough screws, add those to give it extra strength, but the wood can get pretty slim on 3/4 inch ply. Once we have all the slots done in our crosscut sled base, we need to add a slot to the fence as well. Oh no. I guess we're going back to the router table, but that's okay. I'm sure everything will go perfectly fine this time, and yeah, we messed it up again. Well, our bit wasn't sharp enough, and it actually broke the glue bond between the plywood instead of cutting it. We'll clean this up for now, but we'll probably come back and cut this slot out to add T-track. Future Tyler here. You can see that because of the wider slot, our stop block now has a lot of play in it. So let's get that fixed, shall we? Time for a 10-second montage. Much better. With the hard part of making the fences over, we can go ahead and add roundovers and chamfers to all of our pieces. Since these parts will be handled constantly, we highly recommend using an 1/8 inch roundover on any surface that's exposed. And don't forget to add a chamfer to the bottom edge of your fences. This gives the dust somewhere to go, so it doesn't build up and throw your cut out of square. Next, we'll cut a slot in the base for the zero clearance insert. This insert is replaceable, so you can maintain perfect cut lines as it wears down. Try to set your router so that the cut depth is flush with the surface of your base. This is pretty easy if you have a plunge base for your router. Use a straight edge to cut out the pocket, aiming for clean edges with a spiral downcut bit. The replaceable insert is one of our favorite new features on this crosscut sled.
Our last crosscut sled got worn as the wooden miter rail shrank with the seasons, and there was no good way to get back to a perfect zero clearance. Now we can just swap inserts as it wears down, or if we want to use a dado stack. I mean, not that we own a dado stack yet, but if we did, we would totally be swapping inserts for it. Speaking of which, is there a brand of dado stack that you guys really like? Let us know in the comments below. We're always looking for good recommendations. Most of the pieces for this build were sanded only to 80 grit. With a random orbit sander and some good sandpaper, 80 already feels plenty smooth enough for a shop crosscut sled. However, with the bottom face, we are going to sand all the way up to 180 grit. We want this surface to be as smooth and slick as possible. But enough about sanding. Let's talk finish. We said we wanted to get the bottom of our sled to be as slick as possible, and that means paste wax. Also sometimes called finishing wax, this stuff takes a bit of elbow grease to apply, but the results are so worth it. We had our old table saw for years before we learned we should wax the surface. So, if anyone else out there didn't know this, go out and do this right now. Not only will the paste wax protect your cast iron top, but it will also make wood slide so much easier. This makes it much easier to get accurate cuts on big pieces too, because you aren't fighting friction that could pull your part away from the fence. And when your sled and your table saw are both waxed, it is amazing how easy it is to handle. This Crosscut Sled just glides as if it were on wheels. For the rest of the pieces, we just want to keep them from absorbing moisture and warping over time. You could use a nice finish like Rubio Monocoat, but honestly, this is a shop sled. Just use a little cutting board oil or whatever oil you have lying around and move on to the more exciting things.
Like installing the miter rail, or miter slot runner, or miter bar? Honestly, nobody can agree on what to call this thing. Anyway, to make installing the miter rail easier, just put it on your miter slot and then put some double-sided tape on top of it. Set the table saw fence so that when your sled is against it, the blade will be centered to your zero clearance insert, then press your sled down to adhere it to the tape. You may need to put washers or something under the rail to lift it up a hair, depending on how deep your slot is. Then carefully lift your sled up and flip it over so that you can drill and install screws to keep it secure. We recommend using UHMW plastic for its low friction and durability. We've also seen a lot of YouTubers recommend aluminum rails with adjustable inserts. The problem with those is that you need at least 2 of these adjustment points in the miter slot for it to be tight, which means that the beginning and end of your cut might not be completely stable. If you have a good saw with an accurately sized miter slot, then an accurately sized UHMW runner will give you a great fit that never needs to be adjusted and will support you through the entire cut. I mean, that's all any of us want, right? To feel supported? Well, don't worry. We're here for you. You've got this. Once everything is aligned and secured, test the sled by sliding it back and forth. It should move smoothly without any resistance. If it's too tight, check your alignment and that the rail is straight and square. If it is, then sand the rail slightly until it glides effortlessly.
The front fence doesn't need to be perfectly square, but it should be centered on your zero clearance insert and align with the front edge of your sled base. You'll notice that this fence is only big enough to straddle the zero clearance insert and keep our sled's kerf line from pulling apart. We put a full-length fence on our first DIY Crosscut Sled, but that just added weight and got in the way when making miter cuts. Once aligned, clamp the front fence in place and drill countersunk holes for the screws. Secure it with screws, ensuring it's firmly attached. We recommend not gluing this fence in place in case you ever need to do a slightly bigger panel and want to remove it. Now we'll cut the kerf. This initial cut is essential for creating the zero clearance slot in your sled. Raise the blade slightly higher than the thickness of the base and slowly slide the sled forward. Be cautious during this step. Maintain a steady pace and ensure your hands are clear of the blade. This cut will create the reference line for all future cuts on your sled. Just be sure to stop before cutting all the way through your base. We need to keep the base together until we get the back fence installed. Once the kerf is cut, you'll have a precise zero clearance slot that enhances the accuracy of your cuts. It's a simple yet crucial step for achieving clean, tear-out-free cuts.
Squaring the back fence is critical for accurate cuts. We'll start by screwing one end of the fence in so we have a pivot point. Now we can stuff some shims, scrap wood, or playing cards in the kerf line, and then use a reliable square and align the fence perpendicular to the blade kerf. If you have T-track clamps, you may be able to slide them into the T-slots and clamp your fence in place. If you don't, then use a normal clamp to hold it in place, and then drill and countersink a hole and secure it in place with a screw. After securing both ends, test the fence's accuracy with a large piece of scrap wood. Make a test cut and check the squareness. If you need to adjust the fence, then an easy way to do this is by clamping a block of wood against your fence. Then use playing cards or shims between the block and fence to shift the fence slightly before securing it back in place. If you drilled a hole earlier, you'll need to drill a new hole to set this new position. Make a new test cut and continue adjusting as necessary. This can be a frustrating process, especially when recording yourself, but take your time to dial in your fence and it will serve you well for years to come.
The best way to keep your hands away from the blade is to give yourself somewhere safe to put them. To do this, we'll be adding a block to the fence where the blade will pass through and a handle to the side of this block so that it gives us a good spot to grab the sled. This handle position is also ideal because it puts your hand right over the miter rail. Pushing here gives you the smoothest motion and the cleanest cuts. Once that's in place, raise your blade and cut the full height through the fence and the handle block. It's time to put your Crosscut Sled to the test. Make a few test cuts with scrap wood to check the accuracy and smoothness. Pay attention to how the sled moves and the quality of the cuts. If you notice any issues, now is the time to make final adjustments. Check the alignment of the fences, the fit of the miter rail, and the overall smoothness of the sled's movement. Small tweaks can make a big difference in the sled's performance. Once you're satisfied with the performance, you're ready to tackle your woodworking projects with confidence. A well-made crosscut sled is an invaluable tool for any woodworker. But still, it's not the most important thing you can add to your table saw. More on that in just a minute. Let's finish off this crosscut sled.
Let's talk about optional add-ons. Adding T-track clamps and a flip stop can enhance the functionality of your sled, making repetitive cuts easier and more precise. Installing a T-track clamp is straightforward. Simply slide your T-bolt into the T-slot and tighten it down. Our miter fence uses these same slots. Just slide the T-bolt into the slot, slip your miter fence over the T-bolt, and tighten down your handles to lock it in place. This fence has a reference cut at 45 degrees, but it can be locked down at any angle you may need. 30 degrees? Sure. 60 degrees? Of course. 17.43 degrees? Weirdly specific, but alright. Finally, we highly recommend adding a flip stop. A flip stop is a great addition for making repetitive cuts with consistent accuracy. It's a simple upgrade that can save you a lot of time when working on projects. And to make it even more convenient, you can add a tape measure like this one to give you a quick reference for less critical cuts. These add-ons turn your Crosscut Sled into a versatile cutting station, capable of handling a wide range of tasks. Whether you're making furniture or small crafts, these features will improve your workflow and your precision.
Now we have our Crosscut Sled. But what is the most important thing you should add to your saw? Well, if you've been watching closely, you'll see that we actually made that change during the process of this video. The number one thing that every table saw, large or small, needs is an outfeed table. Without one, you risk having boards fall off the end of your saw and dent the clean corners you just cut. And if you try to hold the pieces to keep them from falling, you put your body in a risky position next to the blade while you try and turn off the saw. All it takes is a little twisting to cause kickback or another serious injury. You'll notice that even when we cut our boards earlier, we balanced a piece of wood on the end of the saw to help support the pieces. We didn't film the process of making our outfeed table since everyone's is different, but here's a quick animation to show you how we maximize the rest of our plywood board to make that table. Then we just used a few scrap pieces to support the table and screwed it into our table saw. Here's a few things to keep in mind when making your outfeed table. 1. Make sure it is slightly below the edge of your table saw so pieces don't catch. Adding a chamfer to this edge can help. 2. Try to make it parallel to your table saw so that you can use the whole space as a large work surface. 3. Don't forget to add grooves so that your miter rails can continue through your outfeed table. These don't have to be exact, so long as they're deeper and wider than your miter slot, you'll be okay. And there you have it, our top 2 upgrades to any table saw. With this, your table saw is safer and more versatile than ever. But if you really want to step up your woodworking, you need to master using the router. Check out this video next to learn how to use a router like a pro. Bye friends!